Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is how Tive is making supply chains safer and smarter with my friend Richie Daigle. How's it going, Richie?
Hey, Joe. Doing well. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this topic. Richie, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Yeah, I'm Richie Daigle. I'm an enterprise account executive here at Tive. I am calling from my home office here in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Tive's based in Boston, but I work remotely out of my house. And yeah, so I'm here in Tennessee enjoying some almost fall weather.
I like it. So what does Tive do and what problems does it solve?
Yeah, thanks for asking, Tive. We elevate the level of visibility that customers have to their shipments, not just the location of their shipments, but the conditions that those shipments are in while they're in transit. So we make sure people are in the know with what's going on, regardless of the mode of transportation, regardless of where in the world they are. Customers can easily keep tabs of what's going on with their freight while it's in transit. That solves for a lot of problems. Our thesis is that if people have more awareness of what's going on with their shipments in terms of not only the location, but the conditions that they're in, how hot, how cold, how wet, are the doors open when they're not supposed to be, et cetera. People know about these things in real time in the moment, then we feel like more freight is going to arrive on time and in full, the more informed the people who are responsible for moving that freight are to what's going on with their freight while it's in transit.
Yep. Richie, I haven't talked to you guys on the podcast in a minute, but I've talked to a number of people, including Krenar. And so you guys put a seal on the door. I think that's the very basic, that seal on the door. But that seal, we've had that for a long time. So we say we do so much more than that. You guys have a new seal, but I think you guys have always put sensors inside the trucks, right?
And what we're moving to is a more layered approach in terms of security. And the seal is an additional layer that can be added to a total solution. The device that goes inside the container or inside the trailer has a light sensor on it. And if doors are opened, there's a dark internal area inside the container is now going to have light. And if our device catches that light, we can immediately push out an alert, letting our users know, hey, that device is currently being exposed to light, which means the doors are likely open. And if they're not supposed to be open, then that's a problem. The Bluetooth seal is an additional layer.
And that's the newer product. That's since I've talked to you in the last year.
It's a cable seal that looks like a normal seal, but there's a wire that's threaded through that cable. And if that cable is snipped, or if that seal is impacted, or if the seal separates from the device, will push out an alert. So they're connected through a Bluetooth connection, and the device is inside, and it's listening to that seal for any of those three events, and then it would push out an alert. So that's an additional layer. You think about what happens in a cargo theft. Usually something deviates off a route, but we can have a geofence alert around that. Then something stops, and we can have a prolonged stop alert for that. And then somebody cuts a seal, we can have a cut seal alert for that. Light exposure, we have a light alert for that. So if we have layers put in place for what's going on with the shipment, then the team that's receiving those alerts, there's a red flag or a yellow flag or something when it deviates off of a route. There's another flag that is raised when it's stopped. And we would like for our customers to already be starting to look at a shipment before the doors are open, and then have that confirmation that something really bad is happening when they get those alerts.
Yeah, I love what you just said there. And by the way, I'm going to deviate a little bit off track, but I talked to somebody about cybersecurity not so long ago. Rich is first cousin to cargo theft. And he said, Joe, can somebody break into your house? And I said, yeah. He goes, could you get an alarm and make that less difficult? I said, yes. He goes, can you prevent it completely? I said, I guess I could get cameras. And he says, yeah, you need a security guard. I said, yeah, I need a team of security guards. And he said, does that stop it completely? And I said, I guess not. Somebody could bring one of those SWAT teams on the spy thrillers, and they could take out my security team, break into my house anyway. And he says, his point to that was, you can get better and better, but there is still, if an organization is dedicated to getting in there and they have all the money in the world, they can do. And I think we all have to start thinking along those ways when it comes to cargo theft and cybersecurity and freight fraud. There's still going to be ways to get around it, but you don't want to be the slowest gazelle when the lions get there.
Exactly. I use that all the time. I don't be the slow person running away from the bear that is cargo theft. There, to your point, no one's solving. There's not a solution to this problem. It's a problem that's existed throughout history. We have stories about pirates and stories like going all the way back to the Wild West, and then beyond that, like people have been stealing things as long as people have been around and had things to steal. So I think like this is a historical issue that is just modernized now, and trying to think about waiting until somebody comes along and, oh, maybe harder prosecution and all these things to come around and solve it. That is, I think, not the right approach. I think waiting for somebody else to take on the initiative. Let's not be the victim. Let's take initiative now to not be the slow person. Let's put things in processes, procedures, technologies in place that, to your point, aren't going to prevent it altogether, but are going to greatly impact the probabilities.
Yeah, I think the supply chains, not all, because there's a million different supply chains, and I know you guys do some stuff with pharma and high value stuff. The supply chains we've been fairly trusting. Now, stuff is in yards. Sometimes you'll see a fence with razor wire and all that, but sometimes it gets a little casual, and then we got caught doing this casual thing over the last 5 years. And let's face it, when it comes to freight fraud, a lot of that got sophisticated, but we were not super sophisticated. I think as an industry, it being a top topic on my podcast and probably everyone else's podcast over the last few years, it's starting to sink in. And I just got back from the IANA, Intermodal Association North America conference out in Long Beach. Lots of conversation about freight fraud.
I feel as an industry, we're in like an AA moment where like we all need, because I go to these conferences and I'm sure you hear this as well, and somebody will pull me aside and they're like looking around and all suspicious, and they're like, yeah, we had a theft too, and they're like all secretive about it. And it's, I think that trust is a good thing if we have trustworthy people and trustworthy networks and alliances, and the ability for people to share information and speak openly about, yeah, I was ripped off and here's how they got me, so that other people can learn from that. I think that sort of AA environment is needed right now, if I can borrow that.
Yeah, it's a tough thing though, because nobody wants to go back and say, hey, we were robbed, we were defrauded. It makes it sound like you were somehow being slack, but the best companies in the world are getting taken advantage of. We'll come back to all that in a minute. But first, Richie, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the mothership Tive.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I grew up in the Atlanta area, in the suburbs of Atlanta. Ended up going to Lee University for 2 years, and then I transferred to the University of North Georgia. I played baseball in college, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, there was some baseball things that caused me to want to transfer. I did become an All-American my senior year as an outfielder, and then, long story, ended up signing a free agent contract with the Padres as a pitcher, and I pitched in the Padres organization from 2008 through 2000, or 2005 through 2008. So we got to spend time with Maddox and Peavy and Hoffman and all kinds of big Padre names at the time in spring training and through rehab assignments and stuff like that. Had a great time playing baseball. Yeah, after that, worked a number of jobs, ended up in the travel industry, was in the adventure travel industry for 8 years, started a travel company. And I got very fortunate in that the travel company I started didn't quite pan out, and we ended up folding it in the fall of 2019. Right before the pandemic was
Oh, boy.
all of travel. And at that point, I got an opportunity to get into logistics technology and knowing very little about the space. And yeah, joined a team at Freight Waves and then worked there for a few years, learned a whole lot while I was there, and then transitioned over to Tive about 3.5 years ago.
So you had choices. Why did you choose Tive?
Yeah, with what I learned about the industry and what I learned about Tive, and I'm a nerd. I like research and reading books, and I'm the type of person that's going to overanalyze everything. If I'm going to go buy a new appliance, I'm going to spend 2 weeks reading every single review on everything and criticizing the reviews themselves. And it's just the type of person that I am. But what I learned about Krenar, what I learned about the company, what I learned about what they were doing, the product they had, the problems they were solving, and the customer stories that were coming out, it was something that I wanted to be a part of. And I saw that they were making a material difference to their customers, and that was making the world a slightly better place with reducing waste and cutting back on the number of shipments that get lost or damaged or spoiled while they're in transit. Those are some of the reasons I joined.
Yep. By the way, I've done some interviews with Tive, including with Cronar. I'll make sure I put those in the show notes. I'll make sure in the show notes I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any of the links you and your go-to-market team give me, and some of those previous episodes. So anyone listening can check out my interviews with previous interviews with Tive. Anyway, so one of the things I think the first time I talked to Tive, it was with Cronar. And I was thinking while we were chatting before we hit the record button, how much things have changed over there. So if I say anything during the episode that they go, oh, that was the olden days, catch me on it. Because again, I remember when I talked to Cronar, I'm thinking that was maybe during the pandemic, early time in the pandemic. It was unbelievable. What I thought, this is so cool. We're going to have this on every shipment. Now the sensors, they aren't free, but they're inexpensive. And if you've got $1 million shipment, there's just no reason you don't have one on there. That is a thing of the past. And I say this often to people. When it comes to visibility, somebody says, oh, we have the ELD. We have a chip and code in that ELD, so we can track that trailer. I always say, or I'm sorry, track the tractor. And I was like, cool. Is my trailer attached to that tractor? Probably 99.9% yes. Is my stuff loaded in that trailer? Probably. That's the problem I have is, so we do a really good job of tracking our tractors now using the ELDs and many other solutions. But what was cool about Tive, and still is, was I'll tell you where your freight is. Not where the truck is, not where the trailer is. I'll tell you where your pallet is. And if I'm moving $1 million server or Xboxes or pharma, anything that's high value, it just makes no sense to say, I don't know where it's at today. I can't take that chance. But you guys have gone so much further than that.
The other thing with that line of thought, if it's just an ELD and you're saying, okay, is the trailer attached to the tractor, and is my cargo in the trailer? And the next question is someone else's cargo also in the back of the trailer with my cargo? And that can be a problem depending on the type of cargo that is back there from a regulatory standpoint. There's a lot of issues that can go on if there's only a certain level of visibility if you're only tracking the truck or the train or the vessel or the plane or whatever it is that's carrying the freight. If we have visibility to the freight itself and we have additional visibility, such as, is it the sensor being exposed to light, what's the temperature, what's the humidity, etc., this is going to give us a fuller picture of what's going on.
Richie, I've not looked into it lately, but I know you guys probably have. When President Obama was the president, he signed into law the Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, whatever you want to call it. And it said in there, now the government was not super prescriptive. They didn't say you have to do it this way. They just said you have to make sure that you have to be able to prove to everybody that this food traveled safely. I always watch the cop shows, and you get the chain of custody with the cop shows. Same idea. If somebody was taking you to court and they said, oh, this is the weapon used, and they said, where was it stored? It was there in a box for a while. We lost track of it for a while. It's dismissed. It's no longer evidence. We know that from watching the cop shows. But the same thing has to be true of food or pharma or many other products. I can't say I lost track of where it was for an hour or two. There was a time it was sitting on the dock in the sun, and it might have warmed up. It might have been exposed to insects or rodents, but most likely not. None of that's good enough. None of that's good enough.
If you're going to your doctor and you're going to get an injection of some sort, and the doctor says, yeah, this is probably okay. That's not what people want to hear. Like, we think we lost track of it for a few weeks, but it's got the right label on it. It's probably all right.
Yep. I think I said this when I was talking to Krenar. There was a food company I spoke to. I would never say the name on the podcast. And they had their own trucks. And I remember they told a story to me, not on the podcast, that they were supposed to deliver a product to some grocery stores. And it's supposed to deliver on a Friday afternoon. It was cold chain stuff. And they had to go back to the terminal and say, okay, that'll deliver first thing Monday morning. So they told the guys in the terminal, turn off or keep the cold chain going in there. Make sure that's plugged in. Apparently, they didn't do that. But then they showed up Sunday night and they said, oh, this stuff's all thawing out. And the boss wasn't there. And these guys just said, oh, the hell with it. The hell with it. Just plug it in. Who's going to know? And maybe it doesn't matter with some frozen thing, but that's not a chance that none of us want to take. And they said that stuff most likely, so maybe it was ice cream and it melted and got frozen again. We've all seen ice cream that melted and then froze again. I don't know what the health implications of all that is, but it's not the guys in the warehouse decision to make. What I want is to know that, hey, for some reason, this is coming out of temperature control. Somebody get back into the warehouse and the terminal and turn that machine on. Get that going.
It's important. We've had a number of stories where we've had temperature alerts that have saved shipments. There's one that comes to mind where it was a pallet of pharmaceuticals on a plane, and the reefer unit was human error, just set incorrectly. There was a temperature alert alerting our users that the device was out of the temperature range that it should be in, and they made phone calls and stopped the plane while it was on the runway, while it was on the tarmac, and caught the plane before it took off because it was going to be an international flight. It was going to be in the air for, I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 hours or so. But they caught it and they were able to correct the reefer unit and they saved that shipment. And it's probably $1 million or thereabouts of value on that pallet itself.
Now, I don't know if you still get into this, but I remember having a conversation with someone from Tive about organ transplants. So somebody was shipping an organ and it was getting on a helicopter on top of a hospital. It was going to go, I don't know, to the next hospital and save somebody's life. And they said that the Tive sensor was with the organ, which I'm assuming is some sort of cooler. And they said the helicopter took off without. They said, hey, come back and take the organ. You're going to be very embarrassed when you get to the next hospital. And those are not trivial. Those are life and death. Those are life and death shipments. But humans make mistakes. We need these sensors to keep us on track.
Those are typically the people that come to Tive is when they want guaranteed visibility into location and the conditions, when they just can't take any chances. It's organs, it's pharmaceuticals, it's food, it's fine art or server racks or things where the stakes are quite high. Yes, man, I think a lot of people in the current age are wanting that definitive, reliable sense of tracking as well. And so we're seeing that footprint start to spread out.
Yep. Why don't you give me, now, we're definitely going to talk about cargo theft. Anyone who's listening was in the space knows cargo theft's going to come up. But talk about some of the top use cases that you guys have, industries, and then let's talk about cargo theft and how you guys are wading into that enormous problem.
Yeah, that's, I think our 3 big buckets, we track a lot of food, produce, where we need temperature records. Things need to be kept in a certain temperature range. People want the ability to save a shipment of strawberries or blueberries or asparagus or steaks or tuna or whatever it is that's in transit. So that's a big bucket for us. Pharmaceuticals is also a big bucket for us. Again, from a regulatory standpoint, you have to have temperature records on that. And our devices have gone through validation exercises. We have certificates of calibration that are on every single device. We know our devices are going to be accurate, and we have paperwork and testing and documentation to show that. And that's needed in that space to ensure.
You need a certification to do this pharma type stuff, don't you?
You need a lot of them, and we've been able to go through the processes and get everything in place to have what's needed.
So I want to make the point real quick. I know people think, oh, I'll just use one of those Apple trackers or something. That is not allowed. That you can't get. There's no cutting corners when it comes to the pharma stuff. And I remember talking to you guys years ago, and you were going through that process, and I was like, I looked it up. I was like, damn, this is not easy.
It's intense. It's intense. That's a big bucket for us as well. We track a lot of pharmaceuticals, and then the high value freight space is growing quite a bit. And I think that is because of the environment that we're in from a security and cargo theft standpoint. We're tracking more and more freight for the purposes of safeguarding against cargo theft.
You have to feel really silly at this point when I know I don't want to shame anyone because we're all supposed to raise our hand if we've been victimized by the thieves. But at this point, if you've got high value stuff, just say Xboxes or mobile phones or something like that, and you didn't track it, there are solutions out there. And again, I think Tive just keeps getting more and more sophisticated on this. It just makes sense because we're not talking like a major investment here. This is a very small investment for that security. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of big shippers say it's required to move our freight.
We're starting to see some more of that. And I think insurance companies are starting to listen because they're having to pay out so many claims. And solution's an interesting word because, like we were talking about, I don't know if there's an end to cargo theft that's in sight. But I think that the process or the solution, to come back to that word, because I can't think of a better one at the moment, is only as strong as the weakest link. And the big links in that chain are going to be, what is the hardware that's capturing that information? How reliable is it? What information is being captured and from what source? What's the software that's making that, processing that information, and how digestible is that software making that data? How actionable is that data becoming in the software? And then are there teams utilizing that software and people who have SOPs and plans and processes and procedures who are trained to know what to do if certain alerts come up and certain things happen that are unexpected? And I think those are the big links. And if people can utilize a trustworthy tracker like Tive, have it go into software that makes that data digestible and actionable, and they have people that are ready to go and know what to do, then they're way ahead. They're not the slowest person running from the bear at that.
By the way, for those of you who are not into dad jokes, that's the old joke. Guy's putting on his tennis shoes in the woods, and his buddy goes, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "I'm getting ready to run." He goes, and then he says, "You can't outrun a bear." He goes, "I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you." We don't want to be the slowest human. So one other thing I want to talk to you about is you guys don't just track where the stuff is at. It's beyond the visibility. What else? What other other conditions are you guys tracking right now?
So the device, our 5G device, is also going to pick up on humidity, shock and impact, temperature, and there's the light sensor as well. And we have some customers in the LTL space or in specific types of instances where shock is a factor. They want to know if there was a hard break. They want to know if a forklift dropped something, or they need to know for certain types of cargo, like how it's being handled. And so that we can set up alert thresholds around that. Some ocean freight can be sensitive to humidity. So if there's certain storms or certain weather patterns that vessels are going through, where there's some water that's getting into containers, like we can see the humidity levels and get recordings off of the device that way. Temperature is huge for food and pharma space. And then the light sensor is really important for security. And that's where the seal comes into play as well. And the ability to know or have some sort of signal on what's going on with doors being open, whether those entire doors are being removed from the hinges to keep seals intact, because that happens, or whether it's the seal is cracked open and the door is opened normally. Either way, someone's getting into that freight.
Yep. Richie, if we were talking again 1 year from today, there would be 3 or 4 more things on this list. Because every time I talk to you guys, you add something to the list, which I think is fantastic. It's what the industry needs. But I want to touch on a few of these. Shock and drop, right? Everybody in the logistics space has been through this, where you say, we received it damaged. And you say, oh, I think we delivered just fine. And sometimes there's a broker in the middle. And it's very much one of those he said, she said things. And I've been through that, where you say it wasn't damaged by us, it was damaged by you. Here we have pictures of when it was delivered and it looks fine. No one's ever taken stuff out of the box necessarily. Sometimes you don't. But if somebody somewhere along the line, Richie says, "Hey, Joe, it delivered fine. You guys broke it after you got there." And I say, "Let's call the Tive guys and see what they say about what happened." And then they say, "Oh, Joe, it definitely dropped somewhere in your facility 2 days after Richie delivered it." Okay. Those relationships are great on those deals because sometimes the brokers in the middle they're saying, "We had a good carrier, they did a good job," and you don't want to say the shipper's lying. No one wants to be accused of lying. No one wants to be accused of doing something wrong. Now we got data. Now you say, "Yep, my bad, Richie, I broke it. Sorry for accusing you."
The truth of the matter is, in those instances where everyone's pointing fingers, nobody really knows.
Yep. And here's another one. Let's just say I got $1 million server that I'm getting from Taiwan, and it's getting loaded on a boat, and it's got a time tracker, and then it's going to a few weeks on the ocean before it gets here, and somebody drops it at the port, and you guys say it dropped at the port, and I might say, "Look, that's $1 million server. I don't want my server dropped. Get me a new one. I don't want you shipping it here for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then it sits at the port for a little bit, and then I get it, and I find out it's broken 4 or 5 weeks later. It dropped. That's enough. That's enough for me to say I don't want it." And that, so we can be really proactive with some of these solutions.
That's the whole idea, is for us to elevate the level of awareness and the speed to the awareness that our customers have, and to automate that awareness to an extent. Like, our customers don't have to make check calls to drivers. They don't have to be asking questions about where is something, what's going on. And they don't even need to look at our platform all the time and watch the little dots cross the map. We can set up alerts around any number of things, whether it's entering or exiting certain geofenced areas, whether it's certain shock thresholds that are eliminated, it's light alerts, temperature alerts. All of those can be put in place so that if something unexpected happens, our users get a text message, they get an email, it's brought to their attention in the moment without them having to think about it all the time or waste all of their time wondering what's going on and tracking and this sort of thing.
I ran into this years ago. I was advising a company, and I remember there was a lot of sheet metal, HVAC stuff, and it was moving from down in Mexico up to the Northeast. So it's a long trip. And this stuff was showing up rusted. And so there was a lot of talk about, are there holes in the roof of the trailer? So we were saying to the people, make sure you're looking at the trailer. Make sure there's no leaks in the trailer. And make sure no leaks in the floor. Somehow water's getting into it, because it was traveling across a lot of hot areas. And maybe there was a lot of humidity there. I don't know. But if rain can get in and then it goes through a hot area, it was rusting this stuff. And also there was I've experienced other shipments with mold. You don't get mold if you got the right environment. If you're moving something where rust or mold matters, obviously humidity matters. And if you're the shipper, you're like, I don't know what truck line they're using down in Mexico. Most likely they're going to move it with a truck line from Mexico to the border, transload it, and it's going to move on another. And the problem you run into is now I've got two carriers involved. I want to know where the problem was. And I say the humidity was all wrong here. It was fine here. And so now I can solve that problem because I have data on it. It seems like a little thing until it's the problem you have. Humidity causes rust, and humidity causes mold, and probably a lot of other problems you guys would know about that I don't.
There's kind of two ways to think about problems. There's tactical problems and there's strategic problems. The tactical problems, I think that's where people utilize Tive and devices for predominantly today. Like, I want to track the environment and the conditions of this specific shipment, and so that I'm better aware and in the know of what's happening with this shipment while it's in transit. But strategic problems are more getting at the root cause of problems that are happening on a regular basis. And to properly diagnose that, you need data. You need aggregate data that can either support or refute various hypotheses that people are putting out for what might be the root cause. An example of that is we have a customer who they ship freight cross-border out of Mexico and into the US. And they were dealing with theft. And a lot of the theft that was happening in rural areas of Mexico, who do you know of anybody that is going to proactively and willingly go to rural areas of Mexico to investigate cargo theft? I don't know of anybody. Like even my friends that have all the guns, like I don't know if anybody's going to that. So I think what our customer noticed was that there was a pattern. The aggregate data was able to show that on this route at these times in these locations, it's not a perfect pattern, but there is a pattern formed. And they were able to communicate to their customer, hey, we are going to use this other route. It's a little longer, it's a little more expensive, but we are avoiding this problem that we have data for. So I think the idea of using aggregate data, whether it's from a network optimization standpoint or benchmarking various carriers against one another based not only off their tender acceptance and price and these metrics, but how are they handling the freight and who's having temperature excursions and who's having light excursions and these sorts of things. I think it's the aggregate data that the trackers are bringing to a lot of our customers is quite powerful. And I think that's the future, is that sort of data is going to become more and more meaningful.
Oh yeah, I'm from an automotive engineering background, and I always remember if you have a quality problem, if you have any sort of problem, first thing you do is start gathering data. We don't have enough data points in the past. Now we're starting to have data from the ELDs and some other solutions. And again, I think that all quickly became table stakes where you say visibility is, of course, everybody has visibility, but do I have humidity information? Do I have temperature information, shock and drop, light sensors? I ran into this. I suspect a lot of people run into this same situation moving from Mexico. This stuff was never, if it was not being moved, it was in a locked yard. And somebody said, we took a picture in Mexico, took a picture when we opened it. Somewhere along the line, when it stopped, somebody took some stuff out. And I said, was the seal broken? They said, no. I go, then nothing was taken. And they go, did you see the pictures? I go, I don't know, maybe it shifted. I'm trying to make up a solution here. I said, maybe this stuff shifted. And then somebody said, Joe, look at it again. I looked at a few of the pictures. I go, you're right. Something came out. I said, but the seal wasn't broken. Somebody said, yeah, what happens? And this, I don't remember if this was somewhere in Texas or in Mexico, where in a overnight stop in a yard with cameras in the yard, somebody took the doors off and kept the seal. And I kept thinking how much damn work that was. And they didn't steal very much. It's like sheet metal. And I was thinking, oh my God. So we thought seals 20 years ago, that was probably like, look at this high-tech solution we have. The seal wasn't broken, so no one was able to get at this. Now they're taking the seals off. I'm sorry, they're taking the doors off. And I think you guys have, with your light sensors are catching that. Now, let me ask you this. You guys created a seal in the last, I don't know, was that last year? What's the purpose of that seal? Why'd you guys go that way?
It's another layer. I think this gets back to the irony of the moment today is that more technology than ever before is available to customers, yet theft is worse than it's ever been in the history of the industry, some people would argue. And both of these things are true at the same time. So if there's more solutions and tools available out there for people and theft is getting, like, where's the breakdown happening? And I think we noticed that as a company. Let's elevate our offerings and let's add more layers. Let's do more and equip our customers with more software features, with more hardware features to be able to have a better eye on what's going on with their cargo. One of those additional layers is a Bluetooth seal. So because to your point, there's a lot of times when the whole door apparatus is removed and our light sensor can catch that. And we've caught a lot of that activity, especially in the last couple of years. But there's a lot of times when the seals are just cut as well. And so now having solutions and redundancy in place and additional layers is helpful for our customers. And that was something that was being asked.
So when they cut the seal, does this Tive team say, yep, we caught it?
Yep. So the seal interacts with the device through Bluetooth. So the device will connect to the seal automatically as soon as the seal is closed and activated. The device is going to read it. And now the device is listening to that seal. If the seal is cut, if that cable is cut, our device will push out an alert. If the two get separated, saying that they took the door off and now the door and the seal are too far apart or the tracker and the seal are too far apart for the tracker to read the seal, the tracker will push an alert out for that instance. Or if someone starts taking a hammer to that seal or is trying to tamper with it, there's an alert for that as well. So there's between that seal and the light, we have redundancy for knowing what's going on with the doors, with what we're doing with dynamic geofencing and routes and some of the smart alerts and stuff like that on the software side. We're also elevating what we're providing to our customers as well.
I love it. I love it. It's funny when you think about the traditional seal. I'm shipping something to you. I put a seal on it. I might even put that in the paperwork. So you say, oh, Joe's got a seal. Here's the serial number. Cool. And then when you receive it, you go, hey, the seal's broken. I'm not going to receive this. We have some data points. I put the seal on. I put in the paperwork. The next data point is you said it's broken. We're winners. We got all that data. And what you guys are doing is saying, I'll tell you exactly when it was tampered with, broken into, and where. And now, to your point, we can start to take action. It might not necessarily even save that shipment, but we're gonna get closer to the answers.
And for certain types of freight, chain of custody is huge.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times, chain of custody is something that's argued over extensively, and it's something that's documented manually. Like somebody receives a shipment and they are notating on a spreadsheet or sometimes even pen and paper. I received this shipment at X time and opened the doors at this time. We're seeing some customers that are looking at that seal as a way to determine chain of custody, having something that is a human action at the receiver's facility. They're going to have to clip that seal to get inside and unload the freight. And the timestamp of that seal being clipped can be the chain of custody metric or fingerprint, if you will. So there's that use as well.
Yeah, that Food Safety Modernization Act, if you should ever look through it, I did, because I did a whole bunch of training for a whole bunch of companies. And that Food Safety Modernization Act was the first upgrade of the FDA requirements in 70 years. And it was signed under President Obama. And there was things in there like pallet level visibility. They wanted to don't tell me the truck was the right temperature. Tell me the pallet was the right temperature. Tell me the food on the pallet. Because again, I don't care what happened to the trailer. I care what happened to my future steak. And the challenges we've had with food safety was some stuff perishables, right? Goes bad. We also wanted to prevent tampering, and where tampering is most likely is in liquids. So you're thinking a big tanker of liquids. All somebody has to do is somehow access that, throw in some poison, and it potentially thousands of people could be poisoned. So those seals became the solution. I'm doing air quotes here. It's not a total solution. And again, the challenge to the brands is one slip up, and forevermore you are the one that did this damage. And I hate to mention the Tylenol people again, but years ago, a crazy person went to, I think it was a pharmacy, opened up a Tylenol thing, put some poison in it, and some people died. But no one bought Tylenol for a long time. Why would you? It was why take a chance? I can just buy the next product. As a result of that tampering, now you buy Tylenol or any other medicine, there's that seal beyond the container and there's cotton in there. We didn't used to always have that back in the olden days, but the brands can't afford it. And if you're somebody serving big brands, I think if you highlight the challenges that they potentially could have with this, they will quickly recognize it. I think this is just everything you've talked about today, Richie, feels like table stakes to me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is awareness. What are people's awareness? What's the level of awareness a company has about their freight while it's in transit? And those that are responsible for the freight while it's in transit, what is their level of awareness? And what can be done to elevate that level of awareness? I think if people know more about what's happening with stuff while it's in transit, they're better equipped to act appropriately or take quick corrective actions when something unexpected occurs. If there's a lack of awareness, you don't know what you don't know, and you find out about it when it's too late. And I think that's what we're trying to shift and protect against with our technology.
Yep. Getting back to your solution, before we hit the record button, I was asking you about your solutions, and you said that you always think of it in terms of three elements. Talk about those three elements that make up your solution.
Yeah, so there's a hardware, software, and a people element. And I think it's really important to evaluate all three of these elements whenever putting tracking solution, if you will, into play. What are the limitations and capabilities of the tracker itself? Our trackers work globally. You can change the settings of these trackers.
Yeah, for those watching the video, hold that bad boy up.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a deck of cards.
Yep. So this tracker is
a lot smarter.
It's going to work all over the world. And you can change how frequently you want it to measure and transmit. You can turn GPS on and off. It's also using Wi-Fi and cell tower means for location. So there's redundancy for location. You can determine how frequently you want it measuring things. You can control the battery life. They're going to work all over the world. We have tons of airline approvals, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of capabilities in the hardware itself. It's also reliable. It works. We put these things through the ringer. We know that we are confident that they are going to work. So that is a big component of the solution is the hardware. The second thing is software, because this is recording all that data and it's zapping it into the cloud. Once it's in the cloud, then software is taking that data and organizing it in ways that make it more meaningful, digestible, actionable. And so our software can do things like all kinds of things with custom geofences and geofencing to have alerts for when it's entering and exiting certain areas, building out alert profiles, making it easy to use, easy to create shipments, generate reports, share information with customers. There's a lot of stuff that the software is doing that is beneficial to the end user. And then the third component is there needs to be people on the other end of the alerts that are receiving these alerts if something goes sideways that know what to do with that information, who to contact, who to escalate to, what is the escalation SOP or the protocols that are in place for getting the right people on the job if something, who do you call if there's a temperature excursion? Who do you call if there's a light alert? Who do you call if it's not where it's supposed to be and so forth? So I think those are the three big components to a solution. If companies are evaluating this type of technology or evaluating ways to improve their visibility and improve their tracking, what is generating the data, what software is that data is making that data accessible, and who are the people that are able to utilize that data and make decisions. Those are the three big buckets.
Yep. So Richie, who are the customers for Tive? Is it the shippers? Is it the 3PLs? Is it the brokers? Is it the trucking companies, or all of the above?
All of the above. We sell to shippers quite a bit. We sell to brokers and 3PLs and 4PLs quite a bit. We have a lot of customers in that space, I would say. And even in the carrier space, there are people that, even though that they can track their truck or their tractor and track their trailers, they have an interest in providing this as an additional service or an elevated service to their customers as well from a transparency standpoint. So we work with people that are in all of those buckets from our customer base.
Yep. Now, there's all sorts of visibility solutions like the Project 44s, et cetera. You guys are partners with all of those guys, right?
We are. We have open APIs and webhooks. Our data, we're integrated into a number of TMS systems and into a number of other visibility platforms as well. We can push this data into any system that can accept APIs and webhooks. And there's certainly benefit to that, to overlaying what you're getting from Tive on top of your other data sources to provide more context and everything like that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I know we said we were going to talk about cargo theft. We touched on it a little bit. I want to hit on it a little harder. So Danielle Spinelli from My Carrier Portal, which is now part of Descartes, they did a webinar with the California Highway Patrol. I think the majority of cargo theft has been happening in California. Very big vector. Ports are out there, railroads are out there. It's no longer just opportunistic threat. It's not somebody walking by and says, "Hey, let's break into that truck." It's now much more sophisticated. That's what they're running into. And even groups are associated with the cartels are that ruin the border are getting involved with this. So the bar got higher for security. That was a part of that webinar. But talk about some of the things you're seeing and what your solutions are doing to prevent the cargo theft.
Yeah, the opportunistic theft, from what I'm reading, is staying flat. So it's not like it's going away. It's just not booming like the strategic theft, but it's still there. But then strategic theft is becoming this big problem. Basically, organized crime groups have figured out that cargo theft is relatively low risk and high reward. And that in today's age with the internet, how quickly it can be to resell things online through various marketplaces, there's good business in stealing stuff and turning it into cash. And now that Sauron's eye of organized crime globally has turned towards cargo, that's a problem because these are organizations that have resources, they have training, they have IT resources, they can hack into TMS systems, but they won't necessarily hold them hostage. They won't even let their presence be known. They're just going to use that access to pinpoint which loads they want to go after and target. So there's a lot of spoofing where we had a customer who said, I had to put this one load on the spot market and 6 trucks showed up to pick it up. And I knew that 5 of them are trying to steal my freight. And one of them is legitimate.
Oh my God, that's crazy. That's crazy. Oh my God, I didn't know it was that
Things that are
bad.
going on. Yeah, where they're able to pinpoint what freight they want to target. And from there, they can call drivers and pose as dispatch. They can use AI voiceover resources to act like dispatch. And if they have all of the paperwork information, it's hard for a driver to determine that they're not dispatch or not who they say they are. So stuff gets rerouted. There's a lot of double brokering schemes that are happening. People are figuring out what freight comes out of various warehouses, and they will sit in cars outside the warehouse and they will watch a truck leave and they will follow that truck until it needs to stop to fuel up. And they'll watch the drivers go into the station to get something to eat or use the restroom. And then they'll immediately go break into the back of the truck, fill up an SUV or a box truck as quickly as they can and take off. There's people marking containers at various ports through different ways and waiting for those containers to get on the rail, knowing where the trains are going to sit still. And then they know exactly what container they want to go to hit. So there's a number of sophisticated, I could go on and on with the different types of things that are happening today, but people are targeted. This isn't necessarily opportunistic. Hey, let's just go see what's in here. That's still happening at normal levels, but now we're seeing more of people figuring out what's in certain trucks, what's in certain containers, going after specific types of freight.
I got a phone call this a few months ago. Guy says, "Hey, I'm down in Miami and I have a whole bunch of freight coming out of the ports." And I think it was 12 trucks. And then there's going to be 50 trucks. And it was just like, there seemed like a lot. The guy didn't have a good sense for it. And he said, "I was wondering if you could recommend a good freight broker." And I said, "Yeah, those were my customers. I talk to them all the time." And he goes, "I don't want to work with anybody big, just somebody, I want to work with small broker." And I thought, oh, okay. So I thought, okay, I got the guy. I go, "Introduce you." I forward this guy's information to my buddy. Then the next day, I'm at breakfast and I'm looking at my phone and I decide to look at this guy's website and it looked super generic. And then I called my friend and I said, "Make sure your ops guys look into that." And he goes, "Why?" I go, "I just get the sense, why did they ask for a small broker?" And he goes, "I don't know." I goes, "Because small brokers probably are less likely to have all of the cool tools to prevent freight fraud." And I go, and the guy was super appreciative. "Oh, thank you so much, Joe. This is great. I really appreciate the help." And then I look at the website. It's just, again, these thieves made a website. Now, it wasn't perfect. Within 6 months, they'll be using AI. It will look just like anybody else's website. So the sophistication level just is higher and higher. And by the way, my friend said, I'll call you and let you know. His ops guys goes, no, these guys are sketch. We're not going to work with them. And I was thinking, I'm doing them a big favor. And when in this environment, there's a lot of trucking companies, a lot of freight brokers, it's been lean times. Margin compression, volumes are down. I should say the dollar amounts are down. You want to say yes. You want to say yes to that business. I was excited to call my friend with that business. It's pennies from heaven.
There's this layered approach, I think, makes a lot of sense. Carrier vetting is huge right now. There's a lot of great platforms out there for carrier vetting, and they should be leveraged and used heavily to try to weed out as many bad actors and suspicious actors as possible before the freight's even picked up. But there's, like you said, there's a lot of socioeconomic pressures that are in play right now with where rates are and where the market's at. So sometimes it gets down to specific drivers that may be driving for well vetted and legitimate carriers, but there still could be an issue with certain drivers where they're looking to make extra money or they're looking to provide more and so forth. So both, don't only do carrier vetting and expect for that to solve everything, but don't ignore it either. Like, use carrier vetting alongside trackers like Tive. That's going to be additional layers that will pay dividends.
Yep. Before we hit the record button, you said to me, Joe, the whole industry needs to get more proactive about this. We've been reactive. And in this market being a little tougher, I do think sometimes, not everybody, but some people are maybe letting their guard down because of a cheap rate. So you say, hey, that guy doesn't have a website and he only likes to talk via text, but he is $50 cheaper. So maybe I'll give him a shot. That is the kind of thing. And again, money matters. There's companies that are struggling to stay in business, but you're never going to get ripped off by the guy that you've been working with for 5 years. You're never going to get ripped off by the guy you've been talking to on the phone for years. We got to get our spidey senses to be a little more alert, but also we have to use these tools. And by the way, I don't think when people say things like, oh, this is a cost, there's a cost to Tive. This is the competitive advantage you want to be able to bring. If you're moving food, you're moving pharma, they're probably going to ask for all this. But I think you can be proactive and say, for any product, hey, we have advanced solutions to the cargo theft. And there's a lot of customers who would pay for it. By the way, I'm an automotive guy originally. I never worried about the cost of logistics when I was a customer. Now, I'm sure my transportation team did. I air freighted things without a second thought to China. Never cared. And if somebody said, Joe, that's I remember an extra $400,000 to ship stuff to China. Couldn't care less. There was a launch to meet. So we tend to think that the customer is really price sensitive. And by the way, the transportation department might be, but the industries aren't. And I think if you can show up and say, hey, we partner with Tive and we're bringing a solution that prevents cargo theft, they might be just yelled at by the boss that, what are you doing about this? We don't want to be the next victim. I tell you, Richie, if you and I were somewhere in a Fortune 500 company today and we were responsible for buying solutions, I almost guarantee cybersecurity, freight fraud would be our top priorities. And by the way, I don't want to be hacked. I want to make sure everybody's meeting all the standards they're supposed to meet. Anyway, enough of my blather. I'm going to do the best I can to summarize what we talked about, and then I want your final thoughts on the topic, Richie. So, talking to my friend Richie Daigle, we're talking about how Tive, that's Tive, is making supply chain safer and smarter. Tive is a tracker. It's the size of a deck of cards. Hold that up. There you go, Richie. But you guys also have seals, and it's just, I guarantee, so if they don't have it right now, they're going to have something different next month. They're always updating. And they don't just track where your stuff is. When I say track, ELD information tells you where the tractor is. It doesn't tell you where your trailer necessarily is. You hope your stuff's in that trailer. Most likely it is. Also, we're supposed to be able to have pallet level visibility. I know the Food Safety Modernization Act wanted us to have that. I don't think they enforce it, but they want pallet level visibility on temperature control. But anyway, beyond visibility, Tive does the humidity, super important in a lot of cases, temperature control, shock and drop, all those OS&D discussions you have, you need data on that. We need to know when it was dropped, not arguing about it. And then the light sensors for when the doors opened. And also, what I love about what Tive is doing is they have a three-part solution. They have hardware, that's the deck of cards side sensor. They have software inside that. It's also connected to all the visibility solutions. And they have a team. I was teasing Richie before. So often, before we hit the record button, so often I hear people say, oh, well, we bought this solution and then it comes with this software and the team has to be us. That's just not a good solution. You need a dedicated team who's used to doing this stuff. I'm sure they'll train your team too. You guys most likely are working with anybody who's doing food, especially produce, liquid, all that kind of stuff that's easily tampered with or easily could go bad. Pharma, obviously very important, and high value freight, whether it's our mobile phones or our Xboxes. Anything that's valuable, it really, there's no excuse not to have a sensor on it right now. And again, you guys have a three-part solution. It's the hardware, it's the software, it's the team. Put a big old bow on this, Richie Daigle. Final thoughts on the topic.
I think for people who are considering or thinking or reevaluating the technology and the stuff that they have in place today, a couple questions to ponder are, what are you okay not knowing? What information are you comfortable not being aware of or not knowing about your shipments while they're in transit? And how valuable, what would you pay to know more? And what is the value of knowing more about your shipments while they're in transit? Where does that lead you to? I think those are some things to consider, because for certain types of shipments, people may be okay having a certain level of blindness during that transit. But I think for a lot of people, we do want to know more. So I think those are questions to ponder. What are you comfortable not knowing? And what is the value of knowing? What is the real value? What is it worth to you to have a greater level of visibility for your freight while it's in transit?
I love it. I love it. Richie, I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any other links you and your go-to-market team give me. I'll put those in the show notes. I'll also put some of those past episodes I did with Krenar and others. I'll put those links in the show notes. So what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from Tive at in the coming months?
We will be at Lodger Pharma in Boston, which is coming up a little over a week. We're very close to that. I think 10 days away or so. So we'll be at Lodger Pharma. We'll be at the CargoNet conference in California. We'll be at the TAPA conference coming up in December. I'm sure we'll be at an IFPA as well, GSX, and there will be a number of conferences in 2026. So I'm sure if it's a logistics conference, there's a good chance you'll see us around. But
I was just going to say, I never go to a logistics conference where I don't hear about Tive. But then, by the way, there's good reason for that. Is you guys have had a solution for, I don't know how long you've been in business, but the solutions you bring are the most timely solutions right now, because we are not defenseless when it comes to this cargo theft. We have solutions. And I think also, if you're a freight broker or you're a 3PL trucking company, I think you need to start looking at this as saying, this is the competitive advantage I'm going to bring to the party, that we have solutions that the market wants. And again, I don't think the price is going to scare away most shippers.
Yeah, I think the value that we can provide is pretty clear and evident. That's one of the reasons I joined the company. So yeah, it's exciting to be part of this group and exciting to be able to see what we're able to do for people. Yeah.
And but by the way, at one time we had to upgrade the trucks with seatbelts. And so he says, oh my God, we gotta put seatbelts in that truck. It's gonna be so much more expensive to drive that truck. Yeah, it is. And then at some point we said you need hours of service stuff in that truck, and then an ELD. All those things cost money. At some point we said you need newer trailers. I worked in automotive. They always say you need new trailers. No one thought, does that drive the cost? Of course it drives the cost to have new trailers. But these were investments that we made for good reason. And I think that cost, because I don't manage my business well, no one wants those. But these are costs that add value.
100%. And just so you know, someone came to my door and my dog's barking. So if you hear something, that's what it is. But I agree completely.
I'll let you go, Richie. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's always a pleasure to talk to my friends at Tive. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward.
You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.